Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg with yet another preview of the next generation, 5th generation, full-size iPad 5. So the iPad 5 will be joined by both a silver version and a space gray version. So this again is very similar to the iPad mini, which had a silver version and a slate version. But slate, the entire color line, has been replaced by the space gray. So we see it on the iPhone 5S, we see it on the new iPod Touch 5th generation, as well as the iPod Nano and the iPod Shuffle. So space gray is definitely the color of the hour recently at Apple. We're not sure if we're getting a gold one yet, but we're of course going to have to wait for that debut. So let's go and take a look at the differences here. So again, you can see that the space gray version has a darker Apple logo. So if you look at the inside, again, these are just the shells. So if you look on the inside, you see the Apple logo. Now this is different from something like the last generation iPad mini, which did not have this sort of insert here. Now what some people are speculating is that this might be liquid metal. I have no way of really confirming it. It doesn't appear to be, just because it's all scratched up. The property of liquid metal is that it's really scratch resistant, but that doesn't appear to be the case, at least on the interior. But when it's cast, it has this sort of polished look to it, which is unique to liquid metal. It's also unclear how functional this is. This may be part of an antenna design or just maybe decorative. We're not sure. But if it is liquid metal, this would be there as sort of a test bed for the material, because we know Apple is really interested in producing liquid metal products. So if we look at the silver version, again, it has a lighter Apple logo. It's more of a pure silver version versus that smokier color from the space gray version. Now the space gray model will get the black bezel, while the silver model will get the white bezel. Now, as I said, space gray is replacing slate in the Apple lineup. So here we have an iPad mini in slate. As you can see, it's a big difference in color. So we have a much darker, kind of a bluish color here. And it was kind of famous for the fact that it was easy to scratch or easy to chip off. So the idea here is that space gray is a little more durable. It's a little more closer to the color of the silver or raw aluminum, especially the raw aluminum that is underneath the finish. So hopefully this will be a lot more durable for people than something like this. But generally speaking, I'm a big fan of space gray versus the slate color. I was never a big fan of slate, and I'm glad to see it finally migrating to the full-size iPad, as well as replacing it on the iPad mini. Now if we compare them side by side, you can see it has the same design characteristic of the iPad mini as well as the iPhone 5 with that mirrored chamfer. And you can see it's got that same tint to that chamfer, so you have a more mirrored finish here versus that smokier finish on the space gray model. If you look down here, you'll see the cutouts for the lightning connector, the speakers. So you can see we have a set of dual speakers this time, so stereo, just like the iPad mini. Along the side, you'll see we have the headphone jack. Along the top, we have our microphones. We now have dual microphones for the iPad 5 on the back here. So you see those, a set of microphones, as well as that sleep wake button cutout, as well as our camera. Now the rumor this time is that this will have an 8 megapixel camera, so an improved camera versus the one that's in there right now. We also have those controls here. So we have dedicated or separated volume controls, volume up and down versus the rocker we used to have. And we have that not sleep wake switch, but that mute switch, as well as orientation lock, depending on how you have that configured. Now, of course, the standout difference will be the glass color more than the back color. Now, like I demonstrated in my previous video, we do have magnets along the side to work with a new smart cover, which we can expect with the launch of the iPad 5. This also works with the current smart cover, but of course, the current smart cover is larger than the new iPad 5. And you can see our cutouts for all the buttons and that sort of thing. But we also have something that's kind of interesting here. If you look here, you can see we have more magnets sort of built into the right-hand side of the iPad. We're not sure what that's going to be used for, but it may be used with the smart cover or a yet-to-be-announced accessory. Now, just to recap some of the size differences here, again, we have the new iPad 5 glass over the iPad 4, so you can see just how much bezel they've shaved off on the sides. The idea here is that just like the iPad mini, if you grip the iPad, despite the smaller bezel, you don't have to worry about the finger touching your screen, because the software will compensate for that. It's able to determine whether you're gripping the device versus intentionally touching the screen. Now, if you line up the screen, you can see just how much they are shaving off on the edge. And you can also see that the home button lines up with the existing home button. Now, something very interesting that Unbox Therapy discovered is that the existing home button does not fit the glass of the new iPad 5 bezel, but the Touch ID button does. So the Touch ID button from the iPhone 5S fits the glass of the iPad 5th generation. So we can pretty much confirm that this will be getting Touch ID. Now once again, just to recap the size differences here again, the new iPad 5 is substantially thinner and presumably much lighter than the iPad 4th generation. So as you can see, it's much narrower. It's about the same height, but slightly trimmed down. If you look along the side, you'll see that the buttons have changed just a little. You have those dedicated volume controls versus the volume rocker. You have that switch still in the same location. We also have our sleep-wake button in the same location, as well as the camera cutout. The camera cutout is slightly different this time, and we have that dual microphone setup this time. Alright guys, so that is my quick preview of the Space Gray iPad 5. I really look forward to reviewing these pretty soon, so stay tuned for those videos, and I'll see you again in the next one.